Yeah, this was an easy thing to decide to do because they said if it goes well, we can go out to the China buffet. And they told me that they were going to, this year, I guess you've done it for 2 or 3 years before, and this is the biggest one ever. And so I was a little concerned about finding a parking spot when I came here. And this is happening wherever I go, and I'm so honored and flattered that First Federated had a spot out there. They put my name on a sign and they reserved the spot, and I just went into that van accessible right there. Those are popping up all over town. Out at the mall, they got like 5 of them in a row. I can park sideways. But it's interesting being the guy on the radio because some people know who you are and some don't. A lot of times I get identified by my voice. People say, hey, you're a band. But, I've been around long enough. I've been at the State Fair and I've been on billboards, and we had a TV show for 4.5 years, which in local TV, that's like dog years, And so some people know who I am, some people don't. But a guy came up to me a while back, I think it was at Menards or someplace like that, and he says, hey, I know who you are. You're. And I said, Van Harden? No. And I have spoken at a lot of churches before, and I've spoken on this very spot before when my kids went to Des Moines Christian School here. And I walked around a little bit because I haven't been in the building for a long time. But the principal's office is still there. I was familiar with that, and different purposes now. But I remember doing the sermon at one church here in Des Moines, and I got done, and so I did what the pastor normally does. He goes, stands at the door, people walk out and tell him what a great job he did and all that. So I'm standing there, and this elderly gentleman came up to me, and he said, I want you to know that your message was so important to me. It was like it was zeroed right to me, and it was so important, and I just want you to know how much that means to me. In fact, it meant so much that when I get to heaven, I'm going to tell them Van and Bonnie sent me. Oh. And then I walked around a little bit here too because the kids used to play basketball in the gym down here. And I went down there in that room where they had the book fair, health fair, whatever they called it. I was in there and I laughed because I remember one of my kids was playing an intramural basketball game in there, and I was sitting kind of up and next to the guy that was running the scoreboard. And I don't know if he got sick or what happened, but he said, I gotta go. Can you run the scoreboard? And I said, well, how hard is it? And he said, oh, it's easy. I said, well, I guess so. So he left, and I sat down there, and I was doing pretty well. I knew 2 points, and 1 point for free throw. And then at the end of the first quarter, the buzzer went off, and they didn't tell me how to shut that off. And it was one of those piercing ones. But it was nice to see that room and relive some memories. If you had told me 1 year ago today that there was going to be an inspirational health fair conference here in Des Moines at First Federated, I would have believed that. If you had told me, yes, Van, you will be one of the keynote speakers, I never would have believed that. In fact, I would have said, yeah, then after that, I'm going to go over and style Donald Trump's hair, right? But here I am, and the last 8 months, I have had a life-changing experience, and everywhere I go, everybody stops me, and everybody wants to talk about it, and I'm glad that I'm in a place where I can talk to a lot of you at the same time, because it is very hard to try to tell this whole story over and over and over. And I've even written about it, but I don't have it published yet. But so many people have asked that I'm going to have that done. And The reason I am here is to try to help other people if anybody thinks it would help. And I look different than I used to. In fact, a lot of places where I go, where I see people that I haven't seen for some while, I get a question, and it's one word, and it has question mark after it, and it's, Van? And I've been called, bottom line is, I've lost 91 pounds. I've been called minivan. You know how people make jokes about people that are fat? They make them about people who get skinny too. I found that. I've been called minivan. On that one I said, yeah, I'm fine with that, but just don't start calling me conversion van. We're not going the Bruce Jenner route on this. Draw the line there. And I've been called the incredible shrieking van, and I've been said, why, you're half the man you used to be, and all of that. And so here I am. And 8 months ago, here's how this happened. Many of you know I'm on WHO radio in the morning, and I get up very early, and I go to work, and I spend long days there, and then I come home, and I eat dinner, and I go to bed, and then I do that again. And it was getting to the point where when the alarm went off, granted it's 3:15 in the morning, when the alarm went off, I was having a terrible time getting out of bed. And, you know, who wouldn't, I guess, at 3:15? But I noticed it was physically getting worse and worse and worse. And it made my attitude about it worse and worse and worse. And I thought, I don't know how much longer I can do this. And I was seriously considering retiring, just quitting altogether. And I have been program director at the radio station for a while too. And I would sit at my desk in the afternoon, I would doze off. And that was embarrassing enough to myself when I caught myself doing it. But it was even worse when somebody came into my office. And I mean, if you walked into a guy's office that's supposed to be with it, and the guy is sitting there, you know, what do you do? What's the proper protocol for that? You know, do you go out and bang on a garbage can or something and then come back and say, oh, hi. So that was embarrassing. I thought, that's not good. And I just didn't feel good either. So I'm one of the guys, and I'll bet there's some in this room, that wants nothing to do with going to the doctor. I don't like to go to the doctors. I know a lot of them, they're fine people, but I don't want to go because half the time when you go, you find out there's something wrong with you, you know. And I just didn't really want to do that. But I was getting to the point where this was so bad that I thought, I better go do something. And so I went to this doctor, and I told him, look, doc, I know I get up at 3:15. I know that I'm 63 years old. I know that I work a 12-hour workday. So I suppose if anybody had an excuse to be tired, it's me. But I'm really wondering if there's something really, really wrong with me. And he said, okay, let's dive in. And he set me up for the next month in probably 6 or 7 specialists going through every test known to mankind, pleasant and very unpleasant. And I did all these tests, and when all that was over, a month later, I came back to him. And on that very day, he said, before we do this, he said, tell me about what you eat and how you eat. And he said, what do you have for, he's got his pencil, what do you have for breakfast? And I said, I don't eat breakfast. Why not? Because I'm on the radio. Oh, okay. Well, what do you have for lunch? And I knew this was going to get worse. I said, well, a lot of times I don't have lunch because I'm just so busy working. You don't eat lunch and you don't eat breakfast. No. When do you eat? I said, I eat at 5 o'clock when I get home and then until I go to bed. And he slapped his forehead. And I now know, and I probably knew then and just didn't want to admit it, that's about the worst thing you could possibly do for yourself. So he got out a little piece of paper and he said, all right, here's what you're eating for the next month. He said, for breakfast, when you get off the air at 9 o'clock, you have a cup of oatmeal with walnuts and raisins in it. That's breakfast. For lunch, you have 1 cup of yogurt. And then for dinner, you have boneless, skinless chicken breast, a vegetable, and if you want dessert, you can have a fruit. And he got done and I said, that's it? He said, yeah, that's it. So I thought, that's interesting. I thought he was going to get around to exercising, And I told him that, and I said, I'm glad you didn't because I hate exercise. I'm telling him everything we've all thought, right? I said, I hate exercise, and he laughed, and he said, yeah, I know, most of my patients do. He said, all I'm going to ask of you, along with this, is that you walk for a half hour a day. And you can even take a day off once in a while if you want to. And so I left there, and what was interesting? I could tell that doctor was depressed. He was depressed about me. And I thought, that's pretty bad when your doctor is depressed about you. And I found out later the reason he's so depressed is because he has people like this coming to him all the time telling him the same thing. And he tells them what to do, and they never do it. And they keep coming back every 3 months, and it's the same thing. So I left there, and I thought, something? I guess if I'm going to ask a guy for help, I probably should do what he tells me to do. And he added one thing in there that I really didn't know if I could do. He gave me 3 prescription drugs. I'm not a drug person. I'm not a prescription drug person. I've read a lot about a lot of different drugs, one of which was one he was giving me, and I didn't like the idea of that. I thought it could be maybe worse than what it was doing good. And I told him that. I said, I don't like doing it. He says, well, that's all part of the plan. And so I said, okay, I came to you. I asked for help. You've given me some things to do, and the least I can do is try this. But Doc, I'm going to tell you, I'm just going to be brutally honest. My goal here is to totally get rid of these drugs, and my goal here is totally to get rid of you. And luckily, he did what you just did. He laughed, and he says, yeah, I get that. So I left that office, and I went to Office Depot, and I got a little binder about like this, and I took it with me, and every day since that day in mid-April, I have written down everything I've eaten for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I have written down whatever drugs I had to take, and I have written down what exercise I did that day. And the walking part of it was interesting because I thought, well, yeah, I can walk for a half hour. I live in Adel. In fact, I live in the house where I was born and raised. I'm the only guy I know that's lived in the same house 3 different times. We'll save that for another story. But anyway, everybody in Adel knows me pretty well, either the guy on the radio or the kid that grew up in Adel. So I thought, well, okay, I'll walk around Adel and I'll make some memories as I'm walking around. And so there turned out to be a big problem with that. Every 2 blocks, somebody pulls over in their car. Hey, Van, you want to ride? And I tell them, no, I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing it for my doctor. Oh, okay. And then a lot of times people would stop me and they wanted to talk, and I wanted to get this job done. I want to keep going. And to this day, like when it's cold now, I'll go out to the mall or Mills Fleet Farm or someplace and I'll walk. And I've learned to keep my head down and keep it moving, keep it moving, keep it moving. Because people like to talk. And a lot of them are asking the question that I'm here to answer today. What did you do? So I couldn't walk around Adel much anymore because it was not working. So I went down to the high school track. And I started walking on that track, and I liked that because it was that tartan turf or whatever they call it, and it was kind of soft to walk on. Plus, I knew the measurement of what I was walking, and And so I started walking. I'd walk, 4 laps is a mile, so I'd do that. Then I thought, well, this isn't so bad. So then I started walking 8 laps, and I do 2 miles. Then I got to looking around while I was walking, and I was looking at those stadium seats. And I thought, wonder if I could do that. So one day, instead of doing the walking around, I walked up and down the stairs. And that was pretty hard because I had a lot of weight that I was lifting up and down the stairs. But I did it. And then I thought, if I keep doing this here on this track, I'm going to get bored with this. The scenery is the same and all of that. So I thought, I should go to some other places and do this. Bottom line is, since then, I have walked at over 30 high school or college tracks. And it's great because I even took notes so that I could talk about it on the radio. Best scoreboard, Dallas Center, best. And it was interesting, and I met interesting people. I only got kicked out of one place, and guy, that was over at East High School. The guy says, you got a key for the fence? And I said, no. And he said, well, you better get out. I'm going to lock it up. And I said, okay. So I only had 3 of my laps in, so I went from there over to north and finished the rest of the 5 laps. But, a lot of this stuff is kind of a mind game. You almost have to kind of trick yourself a little bit and keep it creative and don't do the same thing over and over because it helps with your psyche. And I'm convinced that it helps your body to do different things too, to trick your body a little bit. In fact, I remember one time I was walking around the track and I saw that there were some hurdles there and they had sandbags on the hurdles so that they wouldn't tip over. And I thought, I wonder if I could carry one of those sandbags around. So I picked one up and I carried it around a couple laps and I thought, that wasn't so bad. So I picked up the other one and I carried 2 sandbags around, I thought anybody watching this would think, look at that idiot out there carrying sandbags. So anyway, I exercised and I went to all these specialists and I wrote down what I ate and I ate exactly what the guy said I should eat. And I went back in a month and I had already started to lose weight, which kind of even surprised me, to tell you the truth. So the doctor says, hey, man, good to see you. What have you been doing? You look like you lost a little weight. I said, what have I been doing? You sent me to all these specialists. I've been poked and prodded and scanned and I've spent the whole month doing that. Plus, I said, well, if you really want to see what I've been doing, I got this notepad here. You're probably not interested in it. It would be boring. He said, I want to see that notepad. So he pulls up his chair and he sets it down on the little table you sit on with a paper. I just feel like I'm in a butcher shop when I sit on that page. Sit on the paper. And he went through every single page and he was shaking his head. He said, I can't believe this. I can't believe this. Because on every single page he saw, I took my prescriptions. I had oatmeal with walnuts and raisins for breakfast. I had a yogurt at noon, and I had skinless chicken breast in the evening with a vegetable and a fruit for dessert. Once in a while I changed. I put, instead of chicken, I'd do maybe turkey, or I'd grill some fish. And I've really gotten a lot better. I don't fancy myself as a chef by any means, but when you only have a limited number of choices, you start to get kind of creative about, what can I do with this thing now? And I boiled and I broiled and I've steamed and I've done all that, grilled and all of that. And he went through that and he said, wow, I can't believe it. And I said, well, I'm just doing what you told me to do. And remember, I want to get rid of my drugs and I want to get rid of you. He laughed again. And he said, well, great. He said, but I just can't believe you can keep this up, so come back in another month. So I did. And I kept, even though that sheet that he gave me was only supposed to be for a month, I kept writing down everything I ate, everything I did. And I came back in a month and I'd lost a lot more weight. And he says, wow, what have you been doing? Here's the book. Wow, can't believe this, can't believe this. And he said to me something I found very interesting. He said, do you know how encouraging this is to me? Do you know how many people come in here, maybe you saw some of them sitting in the waiting room, that have the same kind of problem that you did, And they come and I tell them the same thing I told you. And I see him over and over and over and nothing ever changes. And he was all smiles. And I mean, this is the guy that was depressed when he saw me the first time. And he was happy about this. So I just kept doing what I was doing, and I did keep it up. And the one thing I will say about this, and I don't mean to make this sound like this was easy, but I've never been a big drinker at all. I've never been a smoker, but I have always admired people who did that and decided, that's it. I'm not going to do this anymore. And I'm not even going to go near it, because that's not good for me. And I thought, you know, one thing I've noticed is that people that go on diets always gain weight, because as soon as the diet's over, so is the regimen that you had. So I said to myself, I have got to do this in such a way so that I do not go on a diet. I've got to do this in such a way so that I've got to think of some way to make this a lifestyle. And I thought, well, I have a lifestyle. I've got it in my book. I'm doing it. So I intend for the rest of my life, with God's help, to eat oatmeal at 9 o'clock with walnuts and raisins, and have a yogurt at noon, and have a chicken breast and a vegetable and a fruit in the evening. And you know, they say, what is it, like 23 or 29 days or something, if you do it, it becomes a habit. And it has become a habit for me. And the thing that I thought, you know, Van, you know what's coming up? The Iowa State Fair. And we're in that little building out there, and every vendor in the world brings all this chocolate-covered stuff on a stick and food and things you never heard of before. And so not only is food accessible at the Iowa State Fair, they bring it to Bonnie and to me on a silver platter and say, here, eat this. Be kind and eat this. And so I thought, I'm going to treat this almost as though I was an alcoholic or a smoker that can't touch a cigarette anymore. I'm just going to have to totally stay away from that stuff, and it's only on me to get that done. Nobody else is going to help with this. This has got to be my state of mind. It's got to be me that's going to stick to this plan that I've got. And so I bought 3 things during the Iowa State Fair. All 3 of them were bottles of water. And, you know, I watched the other people in the studio eating all that food, and I said, boy, this sure is good food. I can tell because I'm watching people eat it, you know. So, and they got some spiffs. But anyway, then my latest doctor's appointment, this guy is beaming. He's so happy. He watches me walk down the hall. He calls the nurses in. Whoops. He calls the nurses into the showroom to say, look at this guy, look at this guy. And I'm so happy for him that he's seeing some results from what he probably spent a lot of money to learn in school. And as a matter of fact, Des Moines Magazine called me the other day, and they're doing a story on him and me together. And in the March edition, apparently that's going to come out. So I've been thrilled about this. I've been happy for me. I've been happy for him. I've been happy for other people that I have been able to help. And I'm not here to push any diet plan. I'm not here to sell anything. All I'm here to do is tell you what happened to me, why it happened, how it happened, and the results. And in that last doctor's office meeting, my blood pressure was way down. My cholesterol was way down. My weight was way down. And I feel better. And I no longer fall asleep at my desk, so I don't have to cover when somebody comes in. And things are just a lot different now. Now at 3:15 in the morning, the alarm still goes off. I haven't found any kind of regimen that'll fix that yet for me. But because of what I've been through, I don't think about retiring anymore. Now, I have retired from my administrative program director responsibilities, and that's been another stress level taken off of me because I've done that for 30 years. And now there's a new guy. And he came in the other day and his head was spinning and he said, boy, I'm sorry I'm late with this, but I had to do that and I had to do that and I had that. Then he stopped and he said, oh yeah, you get that, don't you? I said, yeah. So things are different than they used to be. And I think everybody's metabolism and everybody's psyche is different. So I'm not here to say, do exactly what I did, because it'll help you. But I can't believe that the principles of what I did won't help you. And I am still responsible for making sure that if I come back here next year to this conference, that I'm still 91 pounds down, or maybe it'll be more or whatever. But, you know, this is kind of a moving target to a large degree. Now, having said all of that, I have had so many people come to me, and some of them have been so desperate. And the guys, they always do one thing. They always pat their stomach twice and say, yeah, I need to do that. But I have talked to men, I have talked to women, and a lot of them are absolutely at the end of the rope and they're desperate. Van, you've got to help me. And I like to do what I can by telling my story, but I'm here to tell you too, that if you're relying on your happiness for a guy that's on the radio, you probably have it misplaced. And I'm here to tell you, I love it when people come up to me and give me compliments and say, man, you look great. Man, I've even had women come, you're hot. What? And I mean, who doesn't like compliments, you know? But even if you do that, and even if you lose the weight you want to lose, and even if you get healthier than you get, then you'll get used to that. And everything is relative, you know? And so for me, I am a Christian, have been for a long time. I've been an adult Bible teacher for 35 years. Thank you. And I'm so glad that God put me in a position to do that, because that has given me such amazing perspective on what's really important and what's not. And I remember many, many, many years ago, I think it was because my mother was such a great woman and I admired her so much. Her name was Grace, and everybody called her Amazing Grace. She read her Bible every day and she helped people all the time, and she was such a good witness. And I don't think that really sunk into me when I was really young. But after I got to be an adult, you know how your parents get smarter all the time as you get older. I thought, you know, I want to be like that. So I remember one day I said one of the shortest prayers I've ever said. Dear God, I want to know more about you, and I want to know more about the Bible. Amen. The very next day, I got a phone call from my hometown church right down the street. And they said, hey, Van, our adult Sunday school teacher is leaving, and we need another one. Would you do it? And I mean, I would have laughed at that call if it would have come in 24 hours earlier. And I thought, well, I've always heard that God answers prayers in kind of strange ways that you don't always expect. So maybe that's what this is all about. And I said, well, how hard will this be to do? And they said, not very hard. There's only one person in the class. Really? And who is that one person? Gene Smith. Oh, okay, I know Gene. I'll do it. So I went to that class, but every single week since that time, many, many years ago, I have been forced to study the Bible, to read it, to study it, to reflect upon it, to read some other people's thoughts on it, and it changed everything for me, because I was coming at life from a real worldly perspective. And it taught me that that is a minuscule part of our map. And I wrote a book about it called Life in the Purple Wedge. And I won't get into that because that's another story. But for people that come up to me and I can tell they want to lose weight so badly, and a lot of them it's because they don't feel good, and like me, maybe they fall asleep or something. But a lot of them, It's kind of a vain thing. And we all have egos, and we all want compliments, and we almost all want to weigh less than we do now. And I'm just here to tell you that there's so many people, and I've seen it all through my Sunday school and the Bible teaching career, that are going to be happy as soon as something happens. As soon as they get the job, or as soon as they get more money, or as soon as their husband shapes up and turns into the husband that he really ought to be, or vice versa with the wife, and then they're going to be happy. And I have done Sunday school classes, Bible classes, and people have come up and patted me on the back and said, that was great, that was so meaningful to me. And then I know them, and I've seen them go out and be miserable in the real world. And a miserable Christian is not a very good witness. But the world has overridden the tremendous joy that you can have if you really come to some degree of understanding about what this whole thing about salvation and what it is. So I'm glad I lost weight. I'm glad I get compliments. I'm glad you people would invite me here to talk about this. But I want to tell you that there's a difference between happiness and joy. And I think if you want to lose weight, and you do, you will be happy. But will you really be joyful? Will your priorities really be in the right place? Because there's a big, big difference there. And that's the one thing. I'm happy to tell my story and give you my menu and all of that, and you're welcome to try it yourself, but you need to know this bigger message, that is more important than that. No matter what you weigh, no matter how sick you are, no matter what, that's more important. And so it's important for me to be able to tell you this. I'm kind of glad this is in a church because it's, I would say it anyway, but it makes it easier for me to say here. Now, Patrick is going to take the microphone, and if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer your questions for you. And when we're done with that, you are going to be involved in a standing ovation. You'll understand that more in a minute. Okay, now, does anybody have any questions at all? I'd be happy to answer them. Here's one right here.
Hi, Van. I have gone up and down with weight, and I've been successful getting it off, but then I can't keep it off.
Yeah.
Like you said, you gain weight with a diet. Do you have a plan of what you're going to do to maintain once you are wherever you want to be?
Yeah. And you know, God bless everybody that wants to lose weight and really tries by dieting. I mean, that shows that you really want to do it. But the problem is you really only want to do that for a certain amount of time as the magic pill, and then you want to, and just as you've pointed out, that only works for a limited amount of time. So as I said, rather than to be on a diet, I've decided to be on a whole new way of life. And that's what my book that I write down thing reflects. And believe me, there have been times like at the State Fair and other places where I have, even at my own home, my wife eats different than I do. I have to cook a lot of stuff myself because she'll only put up with so much of that, you know. But you just have to have a mindset that, all right, this is what I'm going to do forever. And that's easier said than done, but you will be, and I'll bet everybody here has been horribly disappointed in themselves at one time or another where you've started to diet. It's like growing a garden. Isn't that a great idea? Until you plant it, you got to take care of it and the weeds come, you know? That's hard. This is a similar kind of thing. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah, here's one up here.
I'm really curious. Do you really just eat yogurt for lunch? What do you do for like business meetings and things like that?
Business meetings at work, a lot of times they'll cater in sandwiches and brownies and stuff like that. And I take my yogurt in and I tell them, knock yourself out.
And you just do it?
Yeah, I just do it. And you know, I don't know that, I told my doctor, I said, well, you know that yogurt's got a lot of sugar in it, don't you? And he said, yeah, but it's really more of a portion control type thing. Because I mean, they're only so big. And so, I don't know, the answer is yes. Yeah, that's what I do, yeah. And, you know, if the answer, I mean, if I wanted to go back to the way I was, then I'd stop doing that and go back to the way. You know, if you continue to do what you've already done, you'll continue to get what you've already got. You know, so I had to break that. Yeah, yeah. Others?
Hey, I have a question.
Okay.
I mean, I have the microphone. I might as well ask a question, right?
First of all, I've never been introduced by anybody that was on password. That's great.
Yeah, it was kind of, you know, I was feet away from Vanna White on Wheel of Fortune, too.
Wow.
I
Now
didn't.
there's a thin woman.
Yes. Yes. Well, it's a calorically intense activity. Now that they're touch screens, I really worry
Oh,
when she does
yeah.
the letters.
We had we did an auction on the air one time for some charity, and Vanna White sent us one of her dresses, and I thought, this looks like a pencil cover.
She could have been on it with Vanna.
Vanna in the morning.
But my question is, you had mentioned at the beginning of the journey, the doctor put you on 3 prescriptions. You weren't excited about them, and your goal was to get rid of those and get rid of the doctor. Have you? How many? Is the doctor still around? You got to do a magazine with him, but is he fired after that?
No, I'm glad you asked that, because I guess I should have followed up with the last thing. 2 times ago when I went to the doctor and we talked and he was seeing my progress, he remembered those 2 things very well. And when he didn't tell me then, but when I got back to the office, his nurse calls and said, "We've been discussing your case. You are now off all prescription drugs." Now that made me feel good, because I didn't feel good about taking those rascals in the first place. So.
And now he's paying you to come visit?
He is a great guy, and I'm so happy for him. And another doctor recommended him to me, and I called the first guy that did the recommendation, and I told him what happened, and he did the same thing the doctor did. He said, "I am so glad you called me to tell me that." He said, "You wouldn't believe how infrequently we hear success stories. We know there's some out there, but we don't always hear them." He said, "You won't know. You made my month." And so if your doctor helps you, you might tell him, "Hey, good result."
Hello. Are you doing any other form of exercise now, or are you doing the walking or to maintain?
Yeah, that's a good question. I still do a lot of walking. Once in a while I do the stair steps, but not so much now that it's icy. Although we interviewed a guy from the Wells Fargo Arena one day, and then I said, "Hey, before you leave, any chance I could get in there and walk up and down your steps?" And he said, "Well, sure, just come over to my office. We'll get you in there." And so, now don't all you do it. But one of the things that I've done is to exercise. Whatever I do it in a progression. When I did the stair steps, I did 100, and I was bushed. Then I did 110. Then I don't remember, well, I know I had been up to 500, but when I went to Wells Fargo Arena, I thought, gee, I don't get in here every day. I did 2,500. I slept well that night. So I do stair steps from time to time. I go over to the Urbandale Public Indoor Swimming Pool, and I really force myself to get tired, really work hard and get tired. And I enjoy that. In fact, the lifeguard's blown the whistle on me a couple of times too. I forget what I was doing, but he didn't like it. And I try to, as I mentioned earlier, I try to kind of trick my body. I don't want it getting used to what I'm doing all the time. I want to do other things. Another good one is when this first started, I tried doing some push-ups. I could do 3 push-ups. And that was embarrassing even to me, even though nobody was around. I could do 3 push-ups, and I thought to myself, well, I'll never do that again. This is demoralizing. But then I thought, what if tomorrow I do 4 push-ups? And so I've done that in progression, and I guess it was earlier this week, I did 99. So, But see, as you lose weight, these things become a little easier because there's less weight to carry up the steps and there's less weight to push up. But and if I think of other exercise things, I'll do them too. I'm open to anything. I like creativity.
Extreme cheerleading, is that in the cards? No?
No, that's not in the cards.
That was the past, right? So it's.
So did you eat all kinds of vegetables? You know, they say to stay away from potatoes and
Yeah, that's true. I've eaten, pretty much, yes, I have eaten all kinds of vegetables. I've stayed away from the potatoes just for the very thing you're talking about. You know, I'm not sure potatoes are all that bad, but the things we do to them, you know, when we French fry them and when we put au gratin cheese and stuff like that on it, you got to watch out for that. But I kind of stay away from that. You know, it's funny, I love Hy-Vee. Any of you that listen to the radio program know I spend a lot of time at the grocery store. And I still spend just as much time there, except now 90% of that time is in the produce section. Because as soon as you start getting processed sugar and processed flour and all this other stuff, you run into troubles. And one more thing about this too. Some of you have loved ones who have weight problems, and you're very, very concerned about them. I'm here to tell you that when I was the loved one that was overweight and people were concerned about me, that was the last thing I wanted to hear about. Don't harp at them. If you want to say, I heard Van Harden tell an interesting story the other day, you know, and connect with that, I'd be happy to help there. But, and usually if you do tell somebody, you know, I love you and I'm concerned for you, and just say, I'm not going to say this anymore because you already know I've said it, but I love you and I hope you can take better care of yourself. And just leave it at that. But harping is not good.
What I want to know is, are you hungry all day long?
No. And I think a lot of it has to do with what I mentioned about 23 days as a habit. After I got used to this regimen, I didn't really get hungry so much all day. But the only times that I have, I've got a little bag of walnuts in my desk, and I'll take a few of them. I find that through this whole kind of eating, sometimes the food was just too soft. I mean, I didn't feel like I don't want to feel like I was eating in a nursing home or something, so I needed something crunchy. So, well, you know what I mean. And so I would have a bag of those, and I'd have a few of those. But you got to watch out, because, I mean, when you do stuff like that, that can be a trigger for more stuff. I drink a lot of water. That's really good, because, you know, more of that you drink, you know, theoretically, the less full you feel. But that's a good question. Anything else? Yeah.
Do I need it?
No.
A suggestion for you when you go to the big box stores to walk. I learned this from a psychiatrist at the Cherokee Mental Health Institute in Cherokee, Iowa. I was a Navy recruiter at the time, and I wanted in the Navy. We had to walk through the passageways in the hospital itself. I had never been with a man that walked as fast as he did. So if you go to Bass Pro Shop, yes, put your head down if you want to not talk to anybody, but walk fast.
Yeah. No, that's a very good advice.
And that's from a psychiatrist.
Yeah. And you know, I heard the other day that walking is as good or maybe better for you than jogging. And I think probably that's because of the, you know, the knee joints can get bad if you have. But that's an excellent point. I've been chased out of a few retail outlets because it was 9 o'clock and it was time to go home, Van. So, I knew that.
Buy something.
Yeah, I walked fast. So.
Do you ever treat yourself to just something you missed, or is that a danger?
Do I ever treat myself to something I miss? No. About the only thing, you know, for some reason I still kind of have a craving for spaghetti. And my daughter-in-law made some spaghetti for me the other day, and it was made out of some weird, I don't know what it was. And it was okay, but not so much. I mean, if that happens, I'm a guy that I have a to-do list all the time. And if I have a real big hunger pang, I've taught myself that's my trigger to go to my to-do list and spend the time doing something productive instead of getting back into doing what I was doing. But that's a great question.
Van, by the time you got to the state fair time, how much have you lost, and when did you first share with others that you changed eating regimen?
I didn't make too big a deal out of it at all at first, because I didn't really even like telling people, hey, I went to the doctor, because I'm a macho guy. You're not supposed to do that. And I noticed that, through this I was starting to lose weight, and I thought, I wonder when other people will notice this. And I purposely didn't say a thing, and sure enough, somebody, you dropping a few pounds? Yeah. And so, I started in mid-April. The state fair was in August, and I think by that time I had lost 45 pounds maybe. And, some people have said, well, aren't you worried that this is not healthy for you? And I thought, hey, I'm on a doctor's suggested food regimen. And they, well, when are you going to stop losing weight? I don't know. I don't even care. Because I figure if it stops, it stops, but I'm eating good meals and I'm doing exercise, so.
Thank you for your motivation.
Thank you very much, you bet. Yeah. Now, yeah.
Do you have a support group?
Do I have a support group? I have a lot of relatives and friends that just started congratulating me and thanking me, like many of you people have done here today. So no, I didn't go through this with other people. I think that's a very good idea to do it. I know the Iowa Games has a thing, Get Healthy Iowa or something like that, and that's built on support of other people. But I'm a guy, and I didn't really want to talk about that much. Not only did I go to the doctor, but I had a problem, and that's why I went to the doctor. And guys are not very good a lot of times about sharing their problems. Women, this is very general, but I find that women are very much more able to share and exchange and all of that than I was. So,
I just mean about an accountability partner.
yeah. Well, I knew I was going to be going back to the doctor, and I knew that I wanted to lose weight, and I knew that I wanted to show him people don't necessarily need prescriptions. And it's one thing for me to tell him, hey, I want to get rid of the prescriptions, I want to get rid of you. It's another thing to show him and then have him tell me that. He learned something just like I did. In fact, there was one, they sent me to sleep apnea tests. And lo and behold, the guy that's a doctor, who's a pulmonologist, I guess they call him, is a friend of mine. I hadn't seen him for a long time, but he weighs more than I've ever weighed before. And so he says, wow, and I'd already lost some weight. Wow, you're losing weight. I said, yeah, and that's why I don't think I really need what you're going to be dishing out. And he said, well, that's my job. And I said, well, yeah, you give a guy a hammer and he's looking for nails. I know that too, And luckily, he got that too. And he said, okay, I'll tell you what. He said, we'll just let you go this time, and you come back in 6 months or so, and we'll check, and if you're making continuing progress, we won't do anything. And I walked out of there thinking, I'm never going back to this guy. I'm pretty sure I can be successful, and I don't want to go back, and I'm going to. But now that I've thought about it, I think I am going back to show my friend Greg, look what can happen. And I'm no Superman. I just did something that was logical. And I even told him, I said, Greg, they put me on these prescription drugs, and I don't like it. I don't want to do it. And I told him what they were, and on one of them he says, isn't that one great? Everybody should be on that. And I said, are you kidding me? He said, no. And I thought about that all the way home while I was driving. And I thought, why would a guy say something like that, especially a doctor? And I came to the conclusion that that is what's keeping him alive, or else he thinks it is. And, you know, we talked about laughing about a magic pill to make this happen. That's his magic pill, I guess. But that'll only work for so long. There are side effects to those things. So that's a lot windier answer than you were looking for.
Yeah, I have a question about one of your colleagues, Jan Michelson.
Who's talking here? Where?
Right here.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Jan Michelson.
Yes.
How's he doing?
Jan Michelson is doing well. If you hadn't heard, he had a stroke in early December, and it was such a bad stroke that had his wife not been there talking to him at the time, he would have surely died. But he was talking gibberish, and he's kind of goofy anyway, and she said, quit fooling around, and he wasn't. And so immediately she got the first responders there within 10 minutes, and so they helped him. They took him down to one of the Des Moines hospitals, and they said, this is more serious even than what we can do. They life-flighted him to Iowa City, and it's been, frankly, a long, hard road, and he's got a long ways to go yet, but he's making steady improvement. And I thank you for asking about that. One thing that I do take every day is a baby aspirin, and one of those little teeny things. And the reason I do that is because it thins your blood just a little bit. And I kind of wonder if Jan Michelson would have been doing that if this would have happened. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't pretend to be one on the radio or anything. But anyway, that's very kind of you to be concerned and ask about that. Yeah.
How important was journaling your food?
How important was my what?
Journaling your food.
Journaling my food. Now that I look back about it, it was very important because there have been a few days now, you know, I only had to do that. I didn't have to do that at all, but I was going to do it for a month because that's what he told me. And I just kept doing it because it worked so well. There have been a few times when I didn't do that, and I found that I was more apt to do something I should not have do. And, well, I just won't write down that day. But so it was very important, and I still do it.
Hi, Van.
Hi.
About 32 years ago, you at, what do you call it, your other position?
Brand X?
Brand X, yes. You were doing...
Just for the whole world to know, since I'm not on WHO, KRNT was Brand X. I was on there for 10 years, and then I've been on 30 on WHO, so I ought to be dead by now. But anyway.
You were doing a Friday the 13th show, and you wanted people to bring things that were unlucky. And I brought to you a horseshoe because I understood that if you hung it upside down, your luck would run out. And I brought you my red Nebraska 13 jersey. And I was probably 140, 145 pounds at the time, and you wore it. And I do believe you could wear it again.
Yeah.
And congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was the same day a guy brought a ladder for me to walk under, and somebody brought a black cat. That was a thrill.
I think I have a question a lot of people would be curious about here. What did you drink?
What did I drink?
Because, can I just tell you really quick, I used to have a really bad Mountain Dew habit.
Yeah.
And I still have this 7-Up Sprite habit where I crave sodas. I've never been a coffee drinker, a tea drinker, anything. So I feel like it's 7-Up or water with flavored stuff.
Yeah.
And it gets really tiring. So how do you get past that 21-day or that thing? I've tried it, and I think a lot of people struggle with this.
Yes.
What do you drink?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't really address about drinking, what to drink. My doctor asked me what I eat and what I drink, and I told him, and I had a lot of fruit juices because fruits are really good for you, you know? So I had a lot of fruit juices, grape juice, you know, all kinds of juice. According to my doctor, none of them. He said, don't drink juices anymore. And I said, what do I drink? He said, water. And I'm very fortunate that I really like water. And I like it very cold. And so I drink water a lot, and I don't know that there's much way to make that less boring. I know there's all these powders and things you can mix into them, but if you've ever read the label of some of the ingredients of what that is, that's not good either. So I like fruit juices when I eat a grapefruit or an orange or something like that. I enjoy the natural juices that are in there, but I don't. I'll tell you this story. Now that, are you off Mountain Dew now? Are you all done with your Mountain Dew? Yeah. Good, I can tell this story. My dentist, he and I talk, or he wants to talk when I got stuff in my mouth, but he said that he can always tell a Mountain Dew drinker when they come in because it does that much damage to teeth. And so I thought, well, that's not good. So at least you're off the hard stuff now. You know, you're working your way down to water. You go to 7-Up, and then I drink some of those Canada Dry, like raspberry flavored water or Mendota water or stuff like that. And when you first have them, it's like having chicken soup that all they did was run the leg through the water, you know. But you kind of get used to that after a while. Any others?
I think we got one last question. One last
Okay.
question.
Hi, Van. I listen to you all the time. I went to a program similar, and I compliment you, you know, and on the water, if you take your weight, divide it in half, it's about the amount of ounces they recommend a day.
Huh.
And if you take it, stop it about a half hour before you eat and not have it right with your meal and then start it again about a half hour after along with your walking, you'll be a long ways towards your program.
Yeah.
Because it takes the hunger pains away.
You listening back there? Yeah. Okay.
You know, I like water so much, I actually bathe in this stuff.
Is that right? Wow. Now, I'm just going to do one more thing here today. And wherever I go and wherever I speak, people are so kind to me, especially after I speak. And I've even received standing ovations, and I mentioned that earlier. But what I would really like to do is, I could not have done any of this, nor would I even be standing here, nor would you be sitting there, if it wasn't for our Creator. He helped me through all of this stuff. And so what I really would like to do is if we could just give a standing ovation to God here today, that would be terrific.